today we're gonna make just a small compote. This is the size of centerpiece that we use a lot for, like, you know, wedding centerpieces. We make hundreds, if not thousands of these a year, this sort of size and shape. Sometimes the vase is different. Maybe it's metal or it's glass, but this size, which is maybe a 5-inch opening, is about the size we would use for like a 60-inch round wedding dining table. And we use all sustainable mechanics. So today I'm just going to use chicken wire. So this is, chicken wire. It's like a big roll of chicken wire. And I just turn it into what we call a burrito, which is just connecting the two pieces and then folding the ends in on itself, so it sort of forms like a ball or a burrito size shape. It depends on the vase, and even for this vase that I literally have made 1,000 times, I don't know what the size of the chicken wire is. I like cut a size, I smush it in. If it fits, great. If not, I adjust it. So like that's kind of big, so I'll just like smush it. There's no like magic to chicken wire. It's just get it in there.
You always use the coated?
Yeah, so we used to use just the regular metal, but what we found were two things. We reuse this all the time, so the regular metal does rust faster, and because we're just washing it and then throwing it in a crate till the next time, the coated is a little bit easier. I don't love using single-use plastic on stuff, but because we use it for so long, it also is easier on your hands. It's hard to cut the regular metal, and if you're using this for design, for like a centerpiece, I would say this is a 1-inch opening. This is the size you want. Smaller, you're going to have a hard time getting your stems through it. Bigger, things are not going to stay in place. So the 1-inch opening is, I think, where you want to be for that.
I've never seen the coated.
Oh yeah, it's great. Well, you can't. It's hard to sometimes find. We get ours at Tractor Supply, so that's a place to get it. All right, so I've got my chicken wire in here. Because this vase is tight and my chicken wire is pretty secure in there, I'm not going to tape it, but you could just put a piece of waterproof tape over it to keep it in place. Like for a big piece like this, I always tape the mechanic in because I don't want it to move around, but this one's pretty tight. So for all of my arrangements, I always like to start with foliage. Foliage for us is not like a afterthought. It's really a part of our design every time. We're always trying to reflect what's happening out in the world in nature, and you never go in a garden and don't see foliage. So all of our growers are growing foliage, just like they grow flowers. They grow them in a greenhouse, they grow them in a field, and we use them in all of our arrangements. And I like to start with them because it really helps develop sort of the shape and the bones of the arrangement. So if I want it tighter, I can start with my foliage tighter. If I want it looser, this really helps me get started. So this is lemon basil. All of the flowers I'm using today are from Lisa's farm. So her and her team harvested these flowers for me yesterday. So everything is nice and fresh. Also thinking about when I start my arrangement, I want to make sure, unless the client tells me that they want a front-facing arrangement, my arrangement's going to be seen on all sides. So partly that's because I like that, and partly because I'm worried that they will put it somewhere where there will be a back, and then I won't be. They'll think I just forgot to do the other side of the arrangement, so I'm always pretty careful about that. So start with foliage. I'm just gonna.
Already add water in there?
Yep, I've got water in there, and I usually do for like event work. I usually put it up a little bit higher than I would for like a single order. So I'm maybe at 3/4 of the way full. Usually for event work, we're making these centerpieces a day, 2 days, 3 days before the event. And so I want to make sure, even though we're checking them when they're in the cooler, I want to make sure that nothing happens, nothing's out of water, nothing gets wilted. All right, so that's just a simple little start to that little arrangement. Put one more piece in. I really like using fragrant stuff in arrangements because we're using local flowers. A lot of commercially sourced flowers that are being shipped have had the scent bred out of them, so people are not they're not really getting the full effect of flowers anymore because scent has been bred out. So I always love to use scented foliage and scented flowers to remind people that flowers do have a scent, and that so much about why we love flowers is because of scent memory, right? Like so much of why we love flowers is thinking about, you know, for me, like lilacs in my grandma's backyard, or maybe like your wedding flowers had camellia, or, you know, some fragrant flower that I always like to have some fragrance in there if I can. All right, so that is a start. And then the next thing I always like to put in are line flowers. So a line flower is just what it sounds like, a flower that grows in a line, unlike, you know, a face flower, different. If you have never seen a flower before, that's the difference. So again, I like to use line flowers next because they do help me with the shape and the sort of lines in my arrangement. This is really the mechanism where people, when they look at an arrangement, they're going to look at a line flower and it's going to draw their eye to the focal flower. So I really like to leave these poking up a little bit so that they're not hidden. I want really these to shine in the shape that they're in. All right, questions while I just fill in a little bit with some celosia? Somebody's got a question. Oh, sure. Picture away. Yep. Take all the pictures.
How do you hydrate those celosia so that they don't be all droopy? Because mine like to just droop over.
Well, a couple things I'll say. Since we're sourcing locally, all of our flowers are coming from, you know, flower farmers in the region. So we are only buying from professional flower farmers who know post-harvest care kind of stuff. So these are harvested, and then, you know, whatever is the technique for whatever flower, that is sort of on, for us, on the flower farmer. Unlike a conventional florist who, when they buy from a wholesaler and stuff comes in a box, nothing is hydrated. So then all of the hydration is on the florist to figure out how to rehydrate everything. So when we get stuff, it comes to us, you know, in water, in a bucket, hydrated correctly. And then we don't really have a lot of problems with like plume celosia unless it's like really hot, or unless it was harvested, you know, either dry, you know, like sometimes when the ground is dry and they're harvested, that can like affect it. But yeah, or you know what, these also rehydrate well. So if we do have some stems that are droopy, we'll just recut them, put them back in the cooler, let them perk up, and then try them again.
Are you treating your water that you're putting in the containers like Floralite?
No, I just use clean water, clean There's nothing wrong with floral food except that it costs money. And I'm cheap and I don't like to spend money if I don't have to. The times that we use floral food is if we are doing arrangements for something like a restaurant where we know they're just going to ignore the flowers and let them die as fast as possible. So we'll try to like give them a little bit of boost. But for all of our single orders, we, you know, try to educate the customer about changing the water and, you know, things like that. And then for event work, I don't care. Because it only has to look good that day.
You know, it's salty water. We're on a deep well that has a lot of sodium. For drinking, we actually put it through reverse osmosis. You know, if the salt
You know
water
what?
is a problem.
I don't have any idea about that. I literally don't know anything about. We have issues in Baltimore, but it's not that. I'm not sure.
Deep wells.
Yeah.
Artesian wells.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question. And you know what? If you see Dave Dowling today, he would be a good person to ask. All right.
Anything below that other than the cage and water? Do you have something down in there?
Nope. Yep. Just the cage. Yep. Just that little bit of chicken wire. So that's just like a little bit of a start. The next thing I'm going to put in are some cosmos. Let's see. I'm going to use pink because I want to fill in just a little bit more before I put my focal flowers in. Somebody asked what this variety was. It's a double click. I don't know what the cranberry, maybe double click cranberry, I'm going to say, or double click bicolor. I don't know. Lane's behind me. She can probably tell us what the variety is. Cosmos are really popular this time of year. Just like in the summer, they have so much like whimsy, and people really, especially for like a garden style arrangement, people really like these. And one thing I want to say, just like as a note, whenever I'm putting stems in my vase, I want to make sure that I'm putting in a single stem, like a nice clean single stem. Because what happens if I have like a stem that is branched and I put the whole branch inside the vase, what happens is that I start to put things between these V's, and I often have to change the position of things. And so if I pull this out, it pulls everything else with it. So when I'm putting things in the vase, I don't mind keeping the V if it's outside of the vase. I mean, this is just like a small thing, but even if you've been designing for 20 years, you still want to move things around sometimes, and it makes it easier to move things around if you keep that single stem. So even though it's sad to take those blooms off, gotta take them off.
Put them in a tiny vase.
But let me say about bud, yes. Our shop, whenever we break off a side shoot, they go on the table and then they go in bud vases. And then there are like half dead flower bud vases everywhere you look in our shop. And then all we do at the end of the week is just put them in the compost, which we should have just done in the first place. But yes, we take the time to put them exactly. Yeah, that is exactly right. Yes, somebody said no foliage in the vase. So I take off any foliage that's going to be in the water, because that is going to dirty your water pretty quickly. So let me just put a few more of these in. Any other questions while we're filling with Cosmos? I'll tell you a little bit. If you signed up for the newsletter, we put out a weekly newsletter all about flowers and flower farming and flower design and local flowers. I think it's a really fun way to learn about flowers, but also to get connected to a local flower community. So if you haven't read it yet, I think if you signed up today, I think you'll find it very, very fun. And at the end of the summer, we are planning on launching an online community for our newsletter readers and people that are interested in local flowers and design. So if you want to check that out, it'll be coming at the end of the summer.
How long will the Cosmos last?
So Cosmos, they are a little finicky, but we have had them last, 7 days, if they're harvested if they're harvested correctly, not too open. About 7 days. All right, so I have been, I can't not use these Rudbeckia because I'm in love with them. And I do have a hard time with Rudbeckia sometimes because we have had some problems with them wilting. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think post-harvest care is an issue. I think sometimes they're not hydrated enough in the ground when they are harvested. But this is the Chimney, I think is the variety. And it has those spoon petals where they're curled in on each other. And they actually, I think, hide wilting a little bit more. So if they do get a little droopy, I think it hides it a little bit more. I also like the, the sort of rustier color yellow, that more vintagey color yellow. I like the bright yellow too, but I do like that sort of vintage color. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Put a few more of these in. I'm going to use some zinnias in this arrangement too. If you guys follow Lisa, you may have seen our podcast episode about my like/hate of zinnias. I do like zinnias. Before you email me later and say, why do you hate zinnias? I like zinnias. We just have had, as a florist, my work depends on sending out a product that is that I can rely on. And I always am nervous about using flowers that I don't know what's going to happen when they get to a client's house. And zinnias are just one of those things that for us in our region, we have a lot of zinnia meltdown. And I'm never really sure when I send zinnias out if they're going to be great for a week or if in a day they're going to turn black and fall apart. So I like them, but in our region, we do have a lot of zinnia meltdown, which we're trying to figure out. We're actually trying to work with the ASCFG to do a study on zinnia meltdown just in the mid-Atlantic to see if there's something within our region with the weather, with the soil, that is sort of making zinnia meltdown worse for us, because we do have a lot of growers that have a problem with it. Lisa has like almost no problem with zinnias. So, I mean, she has had zinnia meltdown before, but she does not have a problem with it. And these are the Queen Orange, Queen Lime Orange. You know, there's that whole series of Queen Lime. I'm partial to orange, so I really love these ones. They're really one of my favorites. Are
there any of the flowers that you're not putting in coolers?
Well, this gets back to my issue with zinnias. You know, zinnias, people say, like, don't love to be in the cooler. For us as designers, that is not feasible. So we are not, you know, especially for wedding work, we're not making an entire wedding on the day of the wedding. We're starting on Wednesday and we're keeping things in the cooler until Saturday. So it is really difficult for us, like basil. We hardly ever use basil anymore because of that, because we just can't leave the arrangements out of the cooler, and we are afraid to put them in the cooler. So basil is one that we have not used a lot of in recent years. Same with zinnias, partly for that reason. Trying to think of what else doesn't like to be in the cooler. There's things that people say don't like to be in the cooler that we just put in because we have to. But there are probably more. You know what, Amsonia? We don't really have anybody who's offering it as a cut. It's out there, but we haven't really had anybody with it on their availability lists as a cut. All right, so I'm going to finish up just with a few more things. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer. If you want, we've got t-shirts for sale. We're also going to give a t-shirt away. Eric's going to pick one. I'll add a couple more things. This is just a little more celosia. I think this is High Z. This is a very popular one in the fall. We use this a ton in the fall. And once your arrangement gets kind of full, your chicken wire starts to get full too, so you might have to squeeze those in a little bit. All right, I think we'll call it a day on that one.